It's such a pleasure to be back here in the Elephant Hall with you again for, sadly, the final day of Africa Energy Week. I hope you've all felt that you've not only met and been inspired by your peers in the sector, but you've also enjoyed some of the entertainment that's put on. You've enjoyed so many of the sponsored events that have been programmed, and that you feel that you really got something not only enjoyable but tangible out of the week. I know that I certainly feel like I have. I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith, and it's a real pleasure to be here amongst you as the moderator. Now, why are we here for this morning? So, diversity of perspective is not an extra, it's not a nice add-on, it's the point for so many of our collective goals. And isn't it at the heart of why we're here for Africa Energy Week, aligning, expanding, examining Africa's interests when it comes to addressing energy poverty and chasing growth? All the expertise here this week is focused on successfully, sustainably steering the continent's energy sector in a global environment in which, for too long, Africa's best interests have been sorely underrepresented, in part because the continent's own expert voices haven't taken up enough space. But that's changing, and quickly, thankfully. And part of those changes is down to the growing space that women are taking up in shaping this essential sector. And in a traditionally male-dominated environment, incorporating vastly more women's expertise is an essential step if Africa's energy sector is serious about using every resource at its disposal to level up in an innovative and transformative way. So, there's no lack of examples of women making exciting and brilliant impact in energy spaces. And to learn from some of them today, it's my pleasure to introduce our first panel, which will be moderated by the CEO of Adela Energy, Grace Orife. Grace, I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much. Please join me in giving them a round of applause.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow industry colleagues. Before I go with the intro of our subject of discussion today, I would like to call forward the incredible women who are going to be part of this discussion. Nokwanda Kumalo from BP South Africa. GM Mobility and Convenience. And the only man on the panel, he decided to join us, King Lee, Head of Policy and Industry in the nuclear industry. And a wonderful Sherry Adoge, Production System Division Manager, Schlumberger. Marwa Nunes, Local Content Manager, ANPG. And the dynamic Uche Anajimba from Seplat, Nigeria. And the amazing Alba Oliveira, Head of East Africa Upstream and Exploration Commercial Negotiations, ENI. Esteemed audience and fellow panelists, today's discussion topic is not only timely, but crucial for our industry and for the future of energy in Africa. The transformative impact of women in energy. As we stand at the crossroads of sustainable development and innovation, it has become increasingly clear that the inclusion of women in the energy industry is just not a matter of equity. It is a catalyst of change. Women have historically faced significant barriers in this field, yet their contributions and leadership are catalyzing the drastic shift. From their pivotal roles in spearheading technological advancement and sustainable practices, women are redefining the landscape of energy in our continent. Their diverse perspectives foster creativity, enhance problem-solving capacities, and promote inclusive practices that benefit not just the communities, but the economy alike. Today, with these wonderful women, we will explore inspiring stories of women who have made remarkable strides in the energy industry, the challenges they continue to face, and the positive ripple effects of their involvement. Our distinguished panelists will share insights on how gender diversity not only strengthens organizations, but also propels the energy sector towards a more sustainable and equitable future. Join us as we dive into the transformative power of women in energy and discuss practical steps we can ensure that this substantial participation is necessary. Together, let's envision a more inclusive and resilient energy landscape that truly reflects the potential of our contributions. Thank you for being here, and let's embark on this enlightening journey together. Addressing the energy value chain requires substantial investments. The last three days, we're talking about investment and investment. Energy infrastructure in Africa is key for us to actually bridge the gap that we currently have when it comes to energy poverty. It requires a model that is crucial for fostering inclusive and sustainable development. Innovative financing models and partnership have been discussed. We have things like gender-responsive, public-private partnerships, social impact bonds, crowdfunding platform for women-led initiatives, microfinancing for women entrepreneurs. But yet, women representation is there's still a gap. And with that needs to be addressed. It's fair to say, over the years, we've seen changes. A lot has been happening in the industry. Many companies are actually putting a lot of initiatives to actually close the gap when it comes to inclusion. However, women still need to be at the table. Nakwanda, how can increasing the representation of women in leadership roles influence the full value energy chain? And how has increasing the representation of women in leadership roles within your organization transformed your company's approach to energy innovation and sustainability?
Thank you so much for the question. Representation matters, and it's not just about lip service. I think, as you've outlined, it's not just about having the right policies and legislation. I'm South African, and in our country we have some very strong legislation and policies, but it's about going beyond that. It's about shifting the mindset and practically executing that legislation. So the company I work for, BP, globally, already in our top executive team, out of the 11 top executive roles, 7 of which are occupied by women. And if I come to South Africa, we've really made a substantial move forward towards representation. And I'll explain to you why it matters just now. A few years ago, we were the first international energy company to appoint a female CEO, Priscilla Mabelane. A few years later, and our current CEO now is also a female, Taelo Mojapelo. And since around 2012, 2013, the chairperson of our board in South Africa is a lady as well, Advocate Tandia Lane. And I'm sitting here today having the privilege of being part of the leadership team for BP in South Africa. So it's not just about policies and legislation, it's about actually making the difference and making the steps to open the doors for women. And it matters You know, we are in an energy transition. We need diverse thinking. We need diverse talent to be able to solve the solutions that Africa has. So it matters, and I'm proud to say I work for an organization that has really made some substantial leaps forward towards that. But it's also not just about what we do in our current organizations, it's about the entire value chain. You spoke a little bit earlier just now around partnerships. One of the things that we're proud of, about 2 years ago, we sold off one of our terminals on the coast of the country in East London in South Africa to a black female organization. It wasn't just about selling the terminal, but also ensuring that this small business is sustainable by ensuring we've got a strong offtake agreement with them. So it's not just about charity, it's not just about inclusivity without some serious financial resilience. We've made sure that end to end, this business is able to survive, and we are its key customer. Earlier this year as well, we changed our supply chain operating model in South Africa to an outsourced model in terms of the delivery of our fuels to our service stations. And one of our key logistics partner is also a black female-owned entity. So it's not just about finding the initiatives and the ways inside your organization, it's around looking at the entire value chain in order to create real inclusivity.
Thank you. So your organization is doing really great.
We're on the right track.
Yeah, end to end, the value chain.
And it matters because it matters for those coming up. It matters for young people to see that it's possible. It matters for young girls in the organization to see that it's possible. And I'm really proud to work for an organization that's made that happen in my country.
Thank you. When we talk of inclusion, we talk of representation of women. We are talking of clean energy. We're talking of we're doing the things the right way. We want to include women, we want women to be part of the narrative, the energy narrative in Africa. Innovation is key. We need to be very intentional when it comes to innovation. And women are not left because there are women who are capable to flow with the innovative initiatives that have been put in place for clean energy, or for the energy transition. That's the word we use now. In what ways, King, do you believe women's perspectives are driving innovation in energy solution? And what measures have your organization been the head of policy and industry engagements? What is your organization doing to reach gender parity and engage more women?
Good morning, and thank you for the question. And it's truly an honor to be here among African women energy leaders. I'm representing Dr. Bibao Leon, our Director General, who's very sorry could be here attending in person. So we, as the World Nuclear Association, is passionate in improving gender balance in the nuclear sector. We're working very hard to bring our industry together and making more inclusive and open to change. So therefore, I'd like to share some notes that have been prepared with Sama. And I think it's key, we talk about innovation. The future is not shaped by technology alone. It's driven by people. People who are willing to lead and make the change. So currently, women represent about 20% of the global workforce in the nuclear sector, underscoring the need to enhance diversity and inclusion in our industry. So attracting more women is not just a matter of fairness, it's a strategic imperative. Driving diverse team bring, as we know, various perspective and improve decision making, drive innovation, and contribute to more resilient, adaptable organization. In our industry, nuclear sector, where safety, precision, long-term thinking are paramount, the value of these diverse perspectives cannot be overstated. So as many research have shown, diversity unlocks innovation by creating an environment where thinking outside the box are heard. So where leaders value differences to deploy resources to develop these compelling ideas. So more importantly, from a purely pragmatic point of view, we, as the nuclear sector, are supporting countries, 25 countries who declare want to treble nuclear by 2050. So our industry need to have all the talents that we can find. So therefore, it really cannot afford to miss the knowledge, experience, and skill of half the world population. So maybe talk a little bit what we are doing as an organization. So World Nuclear Association recognized the importance of gender diversity. So earlier this year, on International Women's Day, World Nuclear Association signed an agreement with the International Atomic Energy Authority, promoting professional development for women and find suitable industry internship opportunity for women. And our organization vision is to facilitate the growth of nuclear sector by informing, connecting, and representing and influencing key actors along the value chain. So we see, in terms of facilitating increase of women in the nuclear sector on many fronts, and I'll highlight some of these. Early engagement is critical. Outreach and participating in energy program that showcase female role models in the nuclear field, inspiring young women and diversify nuclear science. So we at the World Nuclear Association have been consistently promoting STEM education across the diverse forum. Another area that we are working on is to foster international collaboration. Cross-border partnership and international forum play a crucial role in promoting gender diversity. So we as an association have joined the Clean Energy Ministerial Equal by 30 program, which is part of the Equality in Energy Transition Initiative to work to accelerate gender equality and diversity in clean energy transition and close the energy gap by 2030. More importantly, we as an organization want to promote leadership opportunities. So we want to ensure that women are not only entering the industry, but also growing across it and contributing to the development in technical and non-technical decision making. So as part of our leadership development organization, the World Nuclear University is actively working to develop a global nuclear leadership culture and help uphold diversity in inclusion at its core. So for example, our main nuclear leadership program we call Summer Institute is a 5 weeks intensive leadership course for nuclear professionals to develop their key leadership and communication. Last year we had 70 participants from 29 countries and with 35% female participants. Another area we want to see is really important is strengthen international dialogue among women, and which play a crucial role in sharing experience, exchanging best practice and form a supportive network. So I congratulate the African Energy Week in hosting this roundtable to facilitate that. So therefore, by creating a supportive and addressing the barrier to entry, World Nuclear Association is helping to create a more inclusive nuclear sector. Thank you.
Thank you, King. Just a follow-up on what you've said, the initiatives that you guys have in place. Are you looking at retention? Are you looking at attracting the future pool, talent pool, or the workforce? We talked about workforce yesterday when we had, 2 days ago, we had a close leadership, women in leadership session. We are talking about the future of the continent, energy development in the continent. We have to think about the workforce. We are pushing for a future. We have to think about the workforce. And we are looking at every source of energy. We're looking at the fossil, we're looking at renewable, you're talking about nuclide. So what's the plan your organization has to actually attract the future workforce? Go out there at the university. Are you guys having university internship? Are you guys having initiatives? Are you going out there in the university? Are you going out there in secondary school? Are you going out there? We would like to hear what you're doing in terms of the future workforce to actually close the gap, because we still need to close the gap. Energy poverty gap, closing that gap in our continent is not just one source. We need all the sources, and nuclear is part of it.
You're right, and obviously attracting retention and development is key. And not only at the higher education and having a university program, we see at the earlier stage than that at secondary school and early on, having young women, as I mentioned, that make it attractive, see themselves having a role model, choosing STEM subjects as well. Yeah. So really at an early young age, see themselves that want to engage in science subjects is crucial.
Okay, thank you. We've talked about women being represented. We've talked about innovation, which is key. Now, sustainability. Sherry, can you share examples where women-led initiatives have significantly advanced sustainability in energy? As the energy landscape shifts towards renewable, we still have our fossil, which is big, but we should admit that we need renewables as well. What strategies should the oil and gas sector adopt to stay competitive and sustainable? How can companies balance traditional operations with investment in cleaner technologies?
Thank you very much, Grace, for your questions, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. So for us, Faculty for the Future in SLB is a perfect example of women-led initiatives driving sustainability. Just to give some context about Faculty for the Future, since 2004, the Schlumberger Foundation has been supporting Faculty for the Future by providing women fellowships to women pursuing to advance their research in STEM field. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and maths in leading institutions globally. So upon return to their home country, when they complete their research program, they're meant to take the knowledge and challenge and change policies in their region and advance to address the challenges of sustainability where they work, right? So far, this foundation has supported 938 women in 94 countries. And just to mention, because we're in Africa Energy Week, in Africa, the foundation has supported 436 women across 41 nations. So I have a few examples I would like to share with us where we can see the impact these women have done with their research programs. So from Nigeria, I have Professor Cecilia. Her research was focused on development of eco-friendly products from plant oil. And the impact of this was to reduce reliance on harmful chemicals by providing public health and creating jobs in the green energy. So I also have Flora from Zambia. She focused on making cleaner charcoal blocks from waste. And this provided affordable cooking fuel, reducing indoor air pollution, and supporting sustainable energy access in rural areas. I also like to mention Clarice from Rwanda. She focused on assessing climate change impact on water resources. This has ensured access to clean water and informs policies for better water management in community resilience. So a lot I can go on and on highlighting the impact our women driving sustainability in their different regions have had to impact and advance sustainability. Please, I would like you all to join me to give a shout out to the Faculty for the Future and these amazing women that are driving sustainability across the globe. So to answer your second question about how companies can, what are the strategies should the oil and gas sector adopt to stay competitive and sustainable? It's good to mention that in today's shifting energy landscape, it's imperative for us to adapt, right? So it's either we adapt, it's only those that we adapt that will lead in this shifting landscape. Decarbonizing operations and investing in renewable energy is not just a strategy, actually is an imperative. So at SLB, we're driving this transformation heads on. We're scaling up our energy systems to build a resilient energy landscape. So I have some strategies for competitiveness and sustainability. Of course, the first one is to decarbonize and adopt the adoption of cleaner energies. So with all of these climate targets that we have, it's imperative for the oil and gas industry to invest in decarbonizing technologies, right? One of these is the CCS, which is the carbon capture storage, which is vital for reducing emissions drastically. So others will include digital transformation, which will increase and enhance operation efficiency. We're scaling up to digital, including digital and integrating digital in our operations today in oil and gas would definitely increase our operational efficiency. We also need to strategically invest in renewable energies. So this has to do with a lot of collaboration from the government, from the stakeholders to drive sustainability. So that's very important. And lastly, I would like to mention that we need to build capacity. We need to build capacity and develop and train even the workforce to adopt the transition into sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Cherry. One of the key areas we focus in the African Energy Chamber is collaboration. We see the need to grow and to support women in the continent. The Chamber sees the need, reasons why they have the Alban, the initiative they came up with, the Alban. We believe that women across the entire energy value chain should collaborate because they are different levels. You have Namibia, we need skills in Namibia, and we need women in Namibia too. Namibian women to be at the table talking, they are doing a fantastic job. In Nigeria, which is, in terms of the industry, older than Namibia in terms of operation. In Angola, it's older than. So when women collaborate, work together, then the gap, eventually the gap is going to be closer, get closer and closer. Moana, being a local content manager in your organization, what role does collaboration among women in the energy play transforming the field? In what ways has fostering collaboration within women entrepreneurs, even in organizations, IOCs, and innovators, we've talked about innovation already, in the energy field lead to new business opportunities and advancement in sustainability?
Good morning, Grace, and thank you for the question. Good morning, panelists. I think it's a very good question, and it brings together everything that we've talked about so far, and I'm sure we're going to continue to talk about. So we've talked about representation, sustainability, and what is the role of collaboration within all of this. I think it plays an absolutely vital role. Collaboration allows not only for togetherness, but also helps break down barriers, foster innovation, and effectively drive sustainability as well. It's no question that inclusiveness and diversity is not only a matter of social equity, but also, if we think about it, diversity and inclusion is a critical point when we are striving for better and enhanced business performance and long-term sustainability. Research shows that diverse teams, especially with women in leadership, lead to better decision-making and actually more financial outcomes and better financial outcomes. So with all of this in mind, it's the same within entrepreneurship and with females as well. And the question that we ask is, how can we foster this collaboration? So when we're making the initiatives within ANPG, within Angola, within the Angolan energy sector, what we came up with was the Muhatu Energy Network. So this network was created as a female platform, a female network within the sector as a whole. So with representatives from the government institutions, our ministry, ANPG as the national concessionaire and regulator, the international oil companies present in Angola, the national oil company Sonangol, and also the service providers were included in this platform. And the main aim of this platform is to promote and to give the opportunity for women to be together, to foster and harness the power of togetherness, and to give them a voice. Since its conception in 2022, we've implemented two main programs. One is a mentoring program, a cross-sector a mentoring program. So women from the government institutions are being mentored and are mentoring international oil companies and vice versa, and the service providers. And what we've seen is this has brought and broken down barriers in terms of access, in terms of visibility, in terms of not only sitting at the table, but allowing for seats to be brought to the table as well. So that has been our major contribution. We also have internship programs, so females and girls coming up from the educational system are given an opportunity for a first job within service providing companies. We have SLB present, and also national oil companies, national service providers in Angola that are participating in these programs. And then events, various events. A lot of the guys within our company, they're here today, they always ask, but why so many Muhatu events? These women, they're just women, why can't we come to the events? But the aim is exactly for women to be with women, with no hierarchical differences, there's no shifts, we're all the same, we're all one, and we get to know each other. We're only 22% of the sector as a whole, and there's only 5% in leadership within Angola. So these events allow for us to be together, to once again harness this power of togetherness, to speak and to get to know each other. Because when we actually know who we are referring to, who we are speaking to, who we are working with, things end up working much, much easier. So in sum, what we feel is necessary within the collaboration sector, within collaboration, and the benefits of this, on top of that, is that they harness innovation. We think outside the box. We come together and we think outside the box. We're looking at energy transition. What is it that I can bring to the table that's not already been brought to the table? And definitely, I think the main point is this. It drives innovation, it drives sustainability, and fosters togetherness. So collaboration is absolutely key.
Thank you. Thank you. So collaboration is key because with effective collaboration, intentional collaboration, women will be represented. Women will be more, in terms of innovation, more efficient. And sustainability is going to be sure. Thank you. We've talked about education, catching them young, getting them young, going into the universities. We even talked 2 days ago, we talked about going right up to secondary schools before they get to the university. But there needs to be awareness in the educational system. We need to create that awareness. We need to make sure educational system sees that is very important to actually catch them young, to grab them, bring them into the industry quite young. Uche, in your current role as Diversity Inclusion Manager of CEPLAT, what do you think, or how can educational institutions better support women entering the energy field? And we talk on cultural shift, we need that. What steps can the energy companies take to foster a more inclusive culture for women? Because without that, the transformation is not possible.
Good morning, everyone. Great question. And interesting you asked that. It will be difficult to answer that without going back to the beginning, which is the actual pipeline. At the educational level, many of the young women are actually increasingly not interested in getting into the energy sector. or into technical roles. And I'm sure that if you're doing any form of resourcing in the industry, you can already find that the talent pipeline is compromised. So if you take a typical class, you would find maybe, if you're lucky, 20% of, no, maybe 10% of the students in the class are women, and by the time you get to the graduate level, a lot of them have actually gone away from that industry completely. If I bring the example home to my family, my two sisters are engineers, but today 2 of them are sitting as senior vice presidents in Citibank doing investment banking. So we've already lost engineers that should have been working in the industry because of interest. And the question, we can ask, why is this happening? It's because traditionally, if we look at our environmental context, we are in Africa. These conversations are about Africa. The average African woman is already groomed and trained and nurtured to be a homemaker, to be a wife, to be a mom. So she'll start to make decisions around the kind of career she goes into. If she's thinking about working in traditional technical roles in the energy space and she has to go offshore for 28 days, they're already having conversations with her about the viability of that in the long term. I have a friend who's just recently been offered a 2-step promotion to be an OIM in one of the IOCs in Nigeria, and she's turned it down because her simple reason is, my kids are young. I can't leave them and be away for that long. So if you then go back to the educational institutions, how can they attract? One of the ways I would suggest they look at it is, what are the younger people looking for? They're looking for roles that allow flexibility. They're looking for roles that have a social impact. The younger generation, the millennials, the Gen Zs are very big. They are more activists than the older generation. And so the the curriculums have got to be developed in such a way that it's speaking to clean energy, energy transition, social impact, and the long-term impact of having people with that kind of mindset in the industry. So instead of an attack mentality, they're actually thinking about how they can contribute to the energy transition space. And then that makes those kind of courses attractive to them. But it will also be difficult to do that without a public-private partnership, and so that's where the organizations now come in play. What about the situations where organizations like the SLBs, the ENIs, the Seplat Energies can come into partnerships with educational institutions where while you are in college, while you are in university, you're actually doing work. You have exposure to what real work looks like, so that by the time you're coming to the end of the educational tenure, you actually have a better understanding of what the industry is about and its contribution, to the economies, the world economies, and to people in general. And that way, you're more likely to actually retain these people. Now, one of the initiatives that we're actually driving, and we actually have the first program running in December by the OPTS, so that's the Oil Producers Trade Section in Nigeria. So collaboration between Seplat Energy, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and about 3 other players, indigenous players in the industry, is we're actually running a program called Introduce a Girl to the Sector. And we're not targeting them at the university level. We are actually going all the way to the secondary school level. Very young, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, we're pulling them into a room like this, and we're going to have women in the sector, and even men in the sector, tell them what it means to be a professional in the energy sector. So they'll paint a picture of what your life could potentially look like, the contributions you can make to this industry as a whole, and to your community, to your family, the economic empowerment that it actually even gives you to actually pursue your social impact interests. So we're really looking forward to that initiative, because we're like you said, catch them young, catch them at the point when they're still very raw. They can still understand what you're trying to say. They can absorb it and hopefully have an interest and then come into the sector. Your other question around what are we doing about changing culture. In the early days of Seplat Energy, women's contribution was just organic, right? So we hired women, we hired merit-based, we hired the right women, hopefully in the right positions, and they grew organically within the organization. However, over the last 3 years, We have a very strong mandate from our board, and we have some representation of our board members and senior leadership team in the audience here today, who are very strong advocates for not just diversity, which is bringing women in, but actual inclusion, so they actually are contributing to the growth and development of a Seplat Energy. So we now have quite a few women at senior leadership positions at Seplat Energy. The CFO of Seplat Energy is a woman. Our Director of External Affairs is a woman in Seplat. The MD of one of our subsidiaries is a woman. We also have our General Counsel and Director of Legal as a woman. So these are not token positions. These are positions where women who have the skills, the competence, the exposure, the experience are actually seated at the decision-making tables, shaping and driving these organizations, obviously with the support of the organization as a whole. So we're shifting the mindset of people. We've now gone away from the advocacy stage, and now we are doing, we are executing. Because we've been having these conversations at different platforms for so long, and if you're not intentional about it, then we could still be having these conversations 10 years from now, and we want to change that. So now we are in execution stage. We are doing what we say we will do. We are seeing the support of the board. We're seeing the support of the senior leadership team. That's why you would have someone like me. We're more senior women in Seplat than myself, but that's why you have someone like me seated here. So when we start to show, visible leadership, then the women start to believe the narrative, and it shifts their mindset and makes them more interested in actually playing strongly in this sector and not moving away. So it's a long journey, but we're being very deliberate, very intentional about it, and we're going to continue to do that for results in the coming years.
Thank you, Chi. We've talked about retention. We've talked about bringing them, catching them young. We've talked about collaboration. We've looked at innovation. We've looked at sustainability. We've looked at women being represented. We have all these put in place. But how do we manage the pipeline? We need to think about succession plan. The leaders of today, us leaders of today. The future are those coming behind us. So how do we mentor these younger ones coming up? Mentorship is key. Alba, how important is mentorship for women in energy? And what initiatives are most effective? What strategies can foster mentorship for women in the energy sector, especially in areas and region in the continent where there are barriers? The culture, Uche just talked about cultural shifts. There are some areas in the region that is really tough for women. How can organizations support the next generation of female leaders to enhance their visibility and success? We appreciate if you give us example from your organization as well.
Wow. First and foremost, thank you so much for the invitation. I think being the last gets me a little bit in the spot. A lot has been said already. And I think mentorship, it's key. It's a key element, I would say, to address the still very present disparities that we have in the industry. And why it is important? It is important because it allows, again, if it is well modeled, it allows to give women a safe space for them to develop their own identity as leaders, as part of the workforce of this industry. But if we really think, listening to all of the panelists, I think there's a common theme always. And you talk about countries where we have, the unseen, or at least unspoken, barriers still existing. I think at the core of all of this is one fundamental problem, which is the still existing cultural bias and stereotypes. And this is everywhere. is not only in Africa, it's also in Europe. Again, I had the opportunity to share my experience. 2.5 years ago, I moved from Luanda to Milan. And I can assure you that the barriers that we encounter here in Africa, women also face it in Europe. Of course, to a very different degree, but they're still there. So having in an organization, having a cultural mentality that fosters that safe space for women to be able to develop their own voice, okay? It's very, very important. At least I speak from personal experience. So it's, again, it's mentorship, it's key, yes.
Okay. Thank you. We will have 2 minutes each for us to round up. We've talked about what exists. Let's look at the future. The future outlook. African energy. Future outlook. Looking to the future, what trends do you see that will further empower women in the energy sector? I will start with you, Uche.
Okay, so trends for the future that would empower women in the energy sector. I think we need to get in early. You know, we keep having the conversations about Africa's reliance on fossil fuels. We're still going to be 40, 50 years reliant on fossil fuels. So we're still in the early days of decarbonization. So if right now we don't have enough women who are skilled, who are interested in the sector, and we're playing the long game, what I would imagine is that if we can start now to do the advocacy for clean energy, targeting the younger generation who have an interest in, energy transition, clean energy, decarbonization, zero flare, all of these things that we talk about. If we start now to move them from advocacy to interest, from interest to knowledge, from knowledge to skills, right? We could literally have a situation when Africa is then ready, we'll have a pipeline that is filled with women. That's one thing I think that we can do to bring more women into the industry. So go now, catch them early, get them thinking along those lines, find a way to combine, the advocacy and the social impact with them. We're having a deeper understanding of what the industry represents and the value it brings, to, Africa as a whole, and then have them equipped, trained, all of these initiatives that we've spoken about. We'll have a situation where by the time Africa is ready, we have a lot of women who are skilled, knowledgeable, and interested in playing in that space. So I see a future where the future is female, right? And organizations are starting to not just pay lip service to it, but actually be very serious and intentional about it. Social performance is a big one. If you're even trying to raise funding in the international market, they're asking you questions around what are your diversity ratios. They are assessing all of those diversity numbers. They're trying to see all of your deliberate, intentional steps about it. So I see a trend where more organizations will move away from paying lip service to it and actually being detailed and intentional about promoting women programs, women initiatives. I see a lot of women networks arising. There's, Abwen, for example, now, but I see even more who are going to step up and tackle niche areas across the industry. Even at Seplat, we have a women's network called Seplat Women's Awesome Network. I see a situation where a lot of women within this network are having, they have access to opportunities, they have access to leadership, to mentorship, to sponsorship, for visibility that actually forces them to raise their knowledge base and play very strongly in the industry. So that's the future is female. That's what I see. You know, that's a trend that I see, and it's one for us as organizations, as women network, as women as well who have opportunities to advocate for other women, to be very intentional, and sincerity of purpose is very, critical for the success of women in the energy sector.
Thank you, Uche. I'm going to add a question on to that question, because as women, as leaders, we all can influence change in our organization, in our communities. What, next year when we come back here, what can we bring to say this is what I did?
That's a tough one.
It's a really tough one.
Okay, what can we bring next year?
Yeah, to say I'm going to empower,
Okay.
whether it's a mentorship,
Yeah,
whether it's being a sponsor, whether it's being a coach.
yeah, of course.
Next year we come back, we don't want to come back and just talk.
No talk.
We want to come back and say, this is what, last year,
Yeah.
this is what I said I would do, and this is what I have done in my organization to bring a change, to make sure women are represented, to make sure women are efficient innovators, to make sure a woman has been mentored properly, and this is what I did.
I like that question. We have a head of strategy in the room. She's seated somewhere there. And I said to her, listening to one of the conversations in one of the rooms, great content, great knowledge. But I said to her, this entire thing they're talking about, end to end. You're a subject matter expert in the Petroleum Industry Act in Nigeria. I was like, next year, I want you on a center stage. I want you speaking, not just in a closed door room, that's great and good, but I actually want you on a big stage in this room. And she goes, I said, you're doing it. So we're going to make sure that between now and then, what you need to be ready to do that. So that's one of the, and next year, any woman that comes here from Seplat Energy, just remember this, they'll be on a stage somewhere. They'll be on a stage somewhere. Because the truth is, if women don't have these opportunities for visibility, they're not, you're winking in the dark. You're winking in the dark, and a lot of women wink in the dark. We want to move away from that space. We can contribute to these conversations. We can influence policy. We want women, next year, when we come back here, we're talking about organization-wide, maybe 30% of the employees in Seplat are women. In the non-technical functions, like maybe HR, legal, we have about 50-50. In some instances, even 60. In technical, we're still below 20, which is not, abnormal in the industry. But what about next year we come back here to this stage, and I'm telling you that maybe we have 40% of women representation in the technical function. And the question would be, how are you going to achieve that? At the moment, we are actually doing a graduate trainee program. And when I get back, my first assignment is to make sure that 50-50 of the people coming in, 50% of the people coming in are women. So we're going to, and these are women who would have, it's not a token, they've gone through the entire rigors of the assessment, and they've scored the minimum requirements to get into Seplat. So now they're going to get an opportunity to come into the sector and play strongly in the sector. Come back to even our procurement strategy. In October, we launched the first ever women-focused supplier diversity program. Now, in that program, what we're doing is that we're giving 25% of the contracting opportunities to women-owned businesses in Nigeria. Never been done before by anybody in the energy sector. So we've done 2 workshops. Thank you. We've done 2 workshops, and we had 800 women-owned businesses in attendance, where we were telling them about the opportunities in the energy sector. And the feedback was, we didn't even know that I teach yoga. I never thought that I could actually add value to the energy sector. So what about I go and get certifications as an occupational health therapist, for the energy sector, and I can still play in that sector. So now we're trying to teach them how to pivot from, the services and the products that they offer to supply goods and services in the industry. And then we're also going to make sure that where we have a multi-vendor strategy, that 30% of the contracting value in the year, at least, maybe up to 30% can go to women-owned businesses. And we are also telling them, CEPLAT is focused on promoting women. So we want you to do the same within your organization. So when we come back here next year, I'll be reporting that we did that we achieved that, not just in our resourcing within the organization, but even in the bigger value chain of women-owned businesses supplying goods and services to CEPLAT Energy. Maybe we'll have a woman here talking about how her business has grown into hundreds of millions of dollars because she's providing services for CEPLAT Energy.
Thank you.
So I think the commitment definitely that I make, because I think you're right, it's about making some real commitments and pledges to move the industry forward. You spoke about mentorship earlier, and we speak about it a lot in the context of women, but I think we need to get more men into the conversation to really have a fundamental shift in the advancement of women. For my organization, for BP South Africa, I definitely commit to more inclusivity in the network. So I have the privilege of overseeing 500 service stations in the country at the moment. A big part of that is how do we get more women into the industry. So going into sort of 2025, there are plenty of opportunities in which we're going to have many service stations either up for sale or many service stations that we are building into next year. So my commitment is that you're going to see more female representation in terms of ownership of service stations in the country. And we've got various partnerships with some financial institutions in the country to be able to bridge that financing gap, to lower the barriers of entry, to enable women to be part and get involved in the industry. I think also lastly for me, you spoke about it a little bit earlier on, targeting it at an educational level. I think the commitment as well that we make as BP, we have an energy mobility trust, which sponsors various initiatives, but specifically focused on education, university students, high school students, particularly studying in STEM subjects. And going into next year, we still make that commitment to be trying to get more women into the industry and sort of help to close that skills gap. So definitely more funding is still going to be going into that area going into next year. So my personal commitment as the leader of the retail business in South Africa is to get more female franchisees operating service stations in the country.
Thank you.
I'm really privileged to be here and learn so much. And I think what I heard, we touch on a really broad range of subjects, sustainability and sort of mentorship, training, and development. So I'll give you one perspective. So how do we gather all this good practice and embed them into all cooperation? So I see that an important driver to change is the growing adoption of ESG, environmental, social, and governance principle and practice. Yeah. So hope that provide a framework to really gather these good practice and to ensure that these are implemented and embedded in all organizations. So therefore, gender equality is a key element in the social aspect of ESG, and leadership is within the governance aspects. So therefore, hope part of the discussion is really to get this experience and make sure that the S part of the good practice are incorporated. So we share and get this adopted worldwide, obviously in Africa, but elsewhere. So we want sort of enhanced workplace practice that include, family-friendly policy. That's already been mentioned. Friendly, flexible working arrangement, and not only in Africa but in Europe and elsewhere, and have maybe target metrics. So perhaps I would leave at that and really gather these experience and insight and really embed them as to sharing it across the globe.
If you allow me, I
Thank
think
you.
sorry. If you allow me, I think regardless of how we model our policies and practices, they cannot be drafted, implemented, approach in a social vacuum. You cannot have women empowerment without having social, okay, cultural empowerment as well. So it is true. We can all, I think, learn from our experiences and what our companies are doing, but we all are in different contexts, okay? And we need to bear that in mind, and we need to bear in mind that still today, and at least, for example, in my company, although I don't have a specific role on or directly linked to gender equality, nevertheless, I believe, and also my company believes, that gender equality is everyone's business. One of the things that, at least I've been very vocal about it, is let's look at everything that we are putting in place, but approach it in a way that can truly, holistically empower women. And that cannot be done, again, in a social vacuum.
Okay, thank you. Sherry.
Okay. So personal commitment, I think we cannot overemphasize that. It's mentorship. We need to do more mentorship. We need to mentor the young ones to have more seats on the table. So the faculty for the future from SLB isn't going to change. Personally, when I saw the numbers for Africa, it was amazing that that faculty has sponsored over 400 fellows in Africa. They are not going to stop. I know there are more initiatives to continue to sponsor that. If we come next year, I'm sure the numbers would have gone higher than what we're reporting today. And I think for the Gen A, Gen Z, like Uche mentioned, one way, the trend that we see today, it's they are in another world, right? So organizations definitely need to support the flexible work model, right? So to attract these ones, you know, they're on the fast lane. So you need to create that environment and create that model, work model, that works for them, right? And at the end of the day, post-COVID, we've seen that most organizations have switched to hybrid model where you have to work few days in the office and few days from home. And again, overall, statistics have showed that it improved productivity. So we need to continue to drive and support that so that women can create that balance from the home front and even working as professionals. And of course, the last one I want to see is organization to continue to sponsor the STEM programs, catching them young, not just targeting those for the advanced research or those in the university, even those in the secondary schools. We need to start, you know, opening their eyes to the science, the technology, engineering, and maths, and increasing their appetite to aim to pursue their ambition in engineering and all those engineering-related fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think this is a very interesting question, and I want to take off on a couple of points that were mentioned here. Uche mentioned about the importance of making sure that from conception, from the beginning of the pipeline, we try to equalize, so have a 50-50 entrance. But we know that there's a lot of leaks along the pipeline. Once we get up the roles, up the hierarchy, the percentage of women decreases. But I think one thing that we overlook sometimes is just the power of a smile, of encouragement and recognition. I've been in the sector for 15 years now, and I remember coming in, a young girl full of dreams, and going to my first major presentation. It was a full board member meeting, full of men. I am 1.50 meters, so I'm a very tall girl. I look younger than I am, and I walked into this room very nervous to make my very first presentation, and I had one board member look at me, smile, and say, "You got this." And this power to today takes me to places I've never imagined I'd be. And I think my commitment to my team and to those around me is to continue to do the same for them. Is just say, give them that smile at the end of the day or the beginning of the day and say, you got this, you can do this, and I will be here with you, is really what I would like to commit to. And even have next year, instead of me here speaking, one of the girls from my team come and talk about local content in Angola would be a pleasure.
Thank you.
Oh, again, last one. I will go back to my initial thought of creating a safe space for people to be themselves, to achieve their full potential. At least I try to do that every day in my workplace with the members of my team. You said in the beginning that it's important to get, and I hear this constantly, it's important to get a seat at the table. I even heard someone at the round tables saying that if you don't get a seat at the table, you build your own table. And I agree with both, but I think that we need even to go beyond that, because sometimes you may get the seat at the table, but you don't have the voice, okay? So it's very important, and I go back, it's very important that you create your own voice and you be recognized and encouraged for your efforts. And that, again, very much will touch in most of the aspects that we spoke here: mentorship, sponsorship, togetherness, cooperative, so all of that. So I would say that my pledge, to some extent, is to continue my efforts in my company to give an example, if I can be an example, of someone that is not afraid to be herself. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for participating in today's panel discussion on the transformative impact of women in the industry, and you are part of that industry. We've heard inspiring stories, we've heard your stories, and insightful that highlights crucial role women play in driving innovation, sustainability within the energy sector. Their leadership is not only essential for achieving equitable outcomes, but also for navigating the challenges of our energy future, the continent's future. As we move forward, let's commit in fostering. That's why I asked the last question. We need that commitment, not just talk. Fostering an inclusive environment that empowers women at all levels of the industry. Together, we can harness diverse perspectives to create a more sustainable and resilient energy landscape. Thank you all for your contributions, and see you again next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.